Chapter 5. Stuck. The boat spun and spun as it was thrust into darkness and space. It kept on spinning until it landed with a thud and a splash. When the darkness lifted, all 7 children were bruised and lying in a tangle of arms and legs at the bottom of the old rowboat. The boat rocked back and forth as gentle waves rippled against its sides. "What happened?" Lily asked, dazed and queasy, her eyes trying to focus. She struggled to reach out to Emma, but found her friend Matt beside her instead. Hooter, Tony, and Q were under them. Emma and Katie moaned from the bow. "Matt, what are you doing here?" Lily said faintly. "I feel so dizzy," Emma croaked. "My leg hurts," Katie whimpered. "I'm freezing," Tony complained. "Where are we? And when did you guys get into the boat?" Lily wanted to know. "It's a long story," Matt tried to explain. "It was supposed to be our club secret." But Lily had stopped listening. She was too distracted by what she saw. For Levi Lake, the lake she last remembered looking at, the lake she had known all her life, was gone. In its place was a wide, icy river surrounded by fields and trees, and they were drifting along in the old rowboat between large chunks of ice. "Where are we?" Lily asked again. "Good question," Q said, "though I can't guarantee that we're even in the 21st century. He nodded toward a building he could see in the distance. It was made of stone and had a big wooden water wheel that splashed water against its side. "I believe that's called a gristmill," said Q, with the authority of someone who had read his entire social studies book for fun. They were quite popular in the 18th century. "What's he talking about?" Lily asked, her voice rising with panic. "What's going on?" "Oh no, my phone is gone," Matt suddenly announced. "It was in my hand when we were running down to the boat. I must have dropped it." "Well, I've still got mine, and I'm calling home," Emma said. She grabbed her phone from her bag and flipped it open. But panic set in when the words "out of range" and "no signal" lit up the screen. "I'm freezing," Katie said, her teeth chattering loudly. "Why does it feel like winter all of a sudden?" Emma asked. "Because it probably is winter," Matt told them. "You see, this boat is no ordinary boat." He let out a defeated sigh as the awful reality sunk in. "It's a time travel boat." "What?" Lily stared back in disbelief. "You're kidding, right?" "Actually, he's totally serious," Q said. "But we can't be sure where in time the boat has taken us," Tony added. The twins gave each other a frantic look. "Then Katie wasn't making up that crazy story about meeting George Washington?" Lily asked. "No," Matt said. "He even gave you his socks, didn't he, Katie?" But as Matt looked down at his little sister, he saw a large circle of blood seeping through her tights at her ankle. "Oh no, Katie, you're bleeding!" Katie immediately began to sob. Q reached into his pocket for the clean cloth handkerchief that his mother always insisted he carry. Matt wiped away Katie's tears, then tied it around her ankle. "It's a pretty bad cut," he said. Then he wrapped his arms around Katie to keep her warm. "We've all got to get out of this cold," Emma said through chattering teeth. "She's right," Tony said. "And once it gets dark, it's going to get even colder. We'll all freeze to death out here." "Tony, quit exaggerating," Hooter snapped. "Okay, it's cold, but nobody's going to freeze to death, are they, Q?" All eyes were on Q as he adjusted his glasses. "It takes 3 hours," he said. "What do you mean, 3 hours?" Hooter asked. "The normal internal temperature of the human body is 98.6, Q explained. Hypothermia occurs when the body's core temperature drops to 94 or less, which takes approximately 3 hours. And it seems exceedingly possible in this situation." A frosty gloom descended over the group. "Let's just hurry and get to dry land," Matt ordered. He and Lily each took an oar and began to row. Minutes later they were nearing the river's edge when a high-pitched howl ripped across the chilled water. "What was that?" Katie cried. "Sounded like a cat," Matt whispered. "My cat, Muffin, never sounded like that," whispered Hooter. "It sounded more like a wolf," Q said, nervously adjusting his glasses. Nobody moved as the boat drifted into the dark shadows along the water's edge. A sharp breeze whistled through the towering spruce trees along the shoreline, and another piercing howl echoed from a distance. When the boat got to shore, the boys and the twins pulled it onto solid ground. "Tony, you're the scout," Hooter said. "Why don't you hike over to that mill and scout around to see if anyone is in there?" "Go there alone? With wolves running around? Are you crazy?" Tony balked. "Tony's right," Matt said. "We should probably stick together." Katie yelped in pain as she tried to stand. "I can't walk," she cried. "My ankle hurts too much." Lily and Emma helped her out of the boat, but she let out an agonized cry each time she tried to put weight on her foot. I think she must have sprained it, Lily said, looking at Katie's swollen ankle. We'll have to go for help, Matt decided. You girls stay here with her. Just huddle together to stay warm. The girls helped Katie over to a large log, and they held her on their laps. Just as the boys turned to leave, there was a flash of light, then a loud hissing sound. Water sprayed in a wide arc. The children spun around and watched in horror as the old blue rowboat vanished into an eerie blue mist. They hurried back to the river's edge and looked around. They all stared in stunned silence. Without the boat, there was no way home. And the boat was nowhere in sight. Chapter 6. What Fool Does Not Know the Year? We'll go and find someone who can help us right away, Matt cried. But what if something happens to you, Emma wailed. Whatever you do, don't you girls leave the spot until we get back, Matt told them. We may never find each other again. Don't go! Please don't go, Matty-O, Katie cried. That was a name she gave Matt when she was a baby and couldn't say Matthew. Katie, you've got to let us go, Matt said. Here, take this with you then, Katie said, handing him her little pink flashlight. Matt shoved it into his pocket. Don't worry, he told her. We'll be right back. Lily grabbed hold of his arm with a look of panic. Promise, she said. We promise, Matt answered. Matt led the way onto a path that cut through the thick brush, with the boys following close behind. The farther they went, the denser the woods became. Tree branches creaked and moaned as they bent with the wind. There was a sudden rapid beating of wings as something flew down low, just over their heads. Matt shuddered. The path quickly split in two. Which way do we go? Hooter asked. I don't know, Matt said. I don't see any houses. Tony took his spyglass from his pocket and brought it up to his eye. He pointed the glass down one path and then down the other. It all looks the same, he sighed. What do you think, Q? You've got the superior brain, Hooter said. They waited as Q adjusted his glasses, then thoughtfully studied each path. He held up his finger as if testing the wind. Finally, he put his hand back into his pocket. I say we flip for it, he announced. Some superior brain, Hooter grumbled. Matt led the boys on the path to the right. They walked and walked before the stone building they had seen from the distance came into view. They followed Matt up the wooden steps to a narrow porch. He knocked on the wide plank door. Minutes later the door opened, and an old man with a straggly gray beard stood before them. He wore a long green coat and brown trousers that were gathered with raggedy black ribbons at his knees. His clothes stank of sweat and rum, and something gone sour. The miller will do no more business this day, the old man said gruffly. The redcoats have locked him up for taxes owed. And before Matt could stop him, he slammed the door shut. Did you hear the way he talked? Matt asked, his face turning pale. And did you see his old-fashioned clothes? Tony added. Matt knocked on the door once more. Excuse me, sir, he said when the old man reappeared. My little sister is hurt and we need help. The old man's eyes narrowed at the sight of the boy's colorful down vests and sneakers. Where have you lads come from? Why are you dressed so strangely? Hooter was about to answer when Matt spoke up. We're not from here. We're lost. If you could just tell us where we are. Why, you're at Sutton's Mill, a ways outside of Boston town, the old man said suspiciously. The boys glanced at one another and cringed. And the date? Matt asked. We kind of lost track of time. The old man glowered at him. 'Tis the end of February. And the year? Matt asked slowly. What fool does not know the year? Why, 'tis 1776, the old man snapped. Matt shut his eyes tight. It couldn't be true. I've no time to waste on such nonsense, the old man muttered, and started to close the door. Wait, Matt cried. I need to get my sister to a doctor. Do you think you could help us? But the old man shook his head no. The nearest physician was hung as a rebel spy last month. Then he looked sharply at the boys. So tell me, are your families warm to the colony's cause, or are they tender of the English? His piercing green eyes seemed to look right through them. Our families are Americans, Matt assured him. Americans, through and through. My uncle is in the army, Tony piped up. He is the most patriotic person I know. Ah, patriots. The old man's voice softened. And what colony do you patriots call home? Nebraska, Hooter blurted out, before the others could stop him. The old man cocked his head and ran his fingers thoughtfully through his beard. What is this place? Nebraska, he asked. I know of no such colony. Nebraska wasn't admitted to the Union until 1867, Q whispered under his breath, stepping hard on Hooter's foot. We're from the West. We're not a colony yet, Q hurried to explain. It's getting darker and colder, and we have nowhere to stay, Tony blurted out. And my sister is hurt, added Matt. Is the girl in grave danger? The old man asked. I don't know, Matt said. She's cut her foot pretty bad. You'll have to look elsewhere, the old fellow barked. And heed my advice, lads. If you know what's good for you, you'll stay far away from this mill. With that, he slammed the door shut once more. There was nothing left for the boys to do but to turn around and go back down the steps. Well, we've done it again, Tony whispered. We've gone back to the Revolutionary War. And if this is February 1776, that means we went back earlier in time than our last trip, Matt pointed out. 10 months earlier, to be exact, Q said, having done a quick calculation in his head. Which means the British are in Boston, and Washington and his men will soon be at Dorchester Heights. There was a sudden loud snapping of twigs behind them, but when the boys turned back to look, no one was there. It was then that Matt spotted a beam of light coming from a crack in a boarded-up window in the bottom floor of the mill. Maybe there's someone else down there who could help us, he whispered. The old guy made it pretty clear we weren't supposed to hang around, Hooter said. I'm just going to have a look, Matt said, going up to the building. He peered through a crack in the boarded-up window. Oh my gosh, he gasped. What is it? Hooter whispered. It looks like guns, Matt exclaimed. Lots and lots of guns. And cannons, too. What are cannons and guns doing in a gristmill? Q wondered aloud. The crunch of footsteps again sounded behind them. Matt spun around just in time to see a rough-faced man grab hold of Q and bring a knife up to his neck. Seconds later, 3 other men stepped out of the shadows. There were muskets in their hands and tomahawks in their belts. They started for the boys. You were warned to stay away, one of the men growled. You should have heeded that warning, and you might have lived.